Podcasts to grow with. The clarity is potent. Take a pause in the moment. Breathe deep, let the soul lift. The podcast is to grow with. The clarity is potent. Take a pause in the moment. Breathe deep, let the soul lift. The podcast is to grow with. The clarity is potent.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on the Dynamic Pause podcast with Coach Angie. And today we have an awesome guest with us, Onya Robertson. If you don't know, now you know. You will know in a minute. I want to tell you a little bit about her. I'm going to start it off, and then I'm going to toss it her way because I want her to put the cherry on top, because it's always good to hear our own voice hyping us up, right? If you do not know Onya, she is an awesome pro equity consultant, entrepreneur, and storyteller committed to building systems where all communities thrive. She serves as a pro equity consultant with the Washington State of Equity, supporting agencies in advancing equity goals through shared power and accountability. Love that. She's also the founder of Onya Side Consulting LLC, where she helps nonprofits and grassroots leaders access resources, strengthen their infrastructure, and create opportunities for community voice to be compensated and valued. Like, we got to snap it up for that. Like, come on now.
Now, a real job, y'all.
It's all that. And she's also an amazing mom of 2 sons and a husky, she says, but there's more. So Onya, tell us some more about what you've got going on.
I call myself like a busybody, but not in like the negative sense of the word. I just stay busy. I'm one of those people, right? That I'm involved in this, I go to that, check in on this, and I do a little bit of everything. So currently, I do work for the Office of Equity as a pro equity consultant, working primarily, I was working with the Community Reinvestment Project for the last year, and am transitioning soon to work for continuing that work, but with 27 different agencies. So I'm actually getting like a roster of agencies to work with and not just putting kind of all of my energy into one project. So I'm excited about that change coming up. There's a diversity of agencies that will be on my roster. And so I'm excited to kind of dive into what else is going on in Washington state agencies that are on the roster.
That's
So
so cool.
it's like my day job. That's what I do during the day. That's what I clock in and out of, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. But I also, as you mentioned, I have 2 businesses. One is Onya Side Consulting, where I do a myriad of things. As I'm assuming some of the folks that I listen to your podcast, they do a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Oh,
And
100%.
tax season came one year, and I owed way more money than anybody who is doing what I'm doing should be owing. And so I was given the advisement to start a consultant firm. So that's what I did. And so it encouraged me to start asking for compensation more often. And it's turned into an actual business. I help, apply for grant funding, working on a program with another organization to launch next year sometime. So I have an assistant that, a Black woman who's working to get some experience just in general in the various things that I do and, administratively as well. So just supporting us as much as possible and, not apologizing for it, just doing it. So that's that. And then I also started a podcast recently called What in the State of Washington. And I break down, legislative process, the election cycles and the information folks need to make informed decisions when going to the voting booths or sending their votes on their ballots via our mail system. So breaking down some of those processes so that it's more approachable, so that it it makes sense. It's broken down into plain talk. It's not this kind of, oh my God, what's going on? What's an incumbent?
Right.
Breaking down some of those definitions into simpler terms so that our people vote, so that
I
they don't
love
feel
that.
yeah.
That's so good because I don't know that a lot of people are getting taught that. You know, education system is got a lot going on right now. And, from other educators that I've talked to recently for the podcast, I've learned that there's just more requests coming in that take them away from the crux of teaching students. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of administrative pieces that are pulling them away from that. So having other resources out there is so amazing. And also even for other generations who didn't get the right messaging regarding voting when we were coming up and getting into our voting capabilities and rights and all of that. Very cool resource. We'll have that link, send it to me so that I can share that out because I would love to make sure that people, who follow me have that for sure.
And I just wanted to add, I think also it's important to recognize that we're in a really challenging political climate and have been for a really long time, if we're being
Sure.
honest. And so there's good reason for people to be distanced from the political processes that
Mhm.
they're daunting, they're challenging, they're complicated, they're
Yeah.
convoluted. And so I also just am aware of, you know, on my podcast, I say, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And that's okay because I'm here to help you get it too. Right. And um, so yeah, I just wanted to add that note.
I'm glad you did. Thank you so much for that because it's truth. I mean, I think sometimes when we hear things that are resourceful or educational, the first thing you might feel is like a tenseness in that, or that the person trying to teach you doesn't really get it. Like they don't understand from your perspective. And I'm glad you're emphasizing that and keeping that in front of people. And so, here at the Dynamic Pause podcast, one of the things we love to talk about is all things leadership and then how that might connect ultimately to a season of pausing or a moment of pausing that you may or may not have had to take before. But before we get into some of that, tell us a little bit about your leadership journey, maybe some formation.
Yeah, I don't know that I've had I don't know what a traditional leadership journey even
Yeah,
looks
what
like.
is that? Yeah.
But I don't even know what that means, but I feel like I haven't had that.
Okay.
When I think about leadership, I started in high school and in like my last year of high school, there was the Associated Student Body, right? The
Mhm.
ASB. And I had been watching them from a distance all 3 years. And then senior year comes, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm gonna join ASB. And it wasn't really a whole bunch of us, but there was one of the homies that was on ASB, and I was like, okay, I can do it if he's on it because I feel so, uncomfortable or what have you. And so I did do it and we did some cool activities, we I don't know, planned student rallies. And I remember we created this like float, and I forget the theme, but I remember it was like, well, that song by like Aerosmith and um those rappers that did that song together, they kind of
Walk
did
this way.
yeah, they did Walk This Way. Who were the rappers? I'm sorry.
Run DMC, right?
Run
Yeah.
DMC, there we go.
Yeah.
And so, like, half of us were, like, Run DMC members, half of us were, like, Aerosmith members, and we did this thing, and we had the outfits, and we wore the
That's
chucks, and
fun.
this is so dope, And so, being involved in some things like that, like, really made me go, "Oh, this is fun, this is interesting, we're making floats, and we're talking about issues that, impact all students, and we're
Mhm.
going and representing our school at various activities and things like that." And so I got a window into, I mean, I feel like that's like my official window into leadership.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I also, I have all brothers. I'm the only girl in my family. And so I've always
Okay.
led my brothers. I just had to think about it real quick. Like, girl, please. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been waking them up. I've been,
Okay.
getting them corralled for school. And so I think there's a certain level of leadership there, keeping them from like tearing each other up over
Oh, yes.
minimal things. And so, and doing some modeling, like modeling the way, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But sometimes it's like, I'm chilling, so maybe they'll relax a little bit, right?
Totally.
So yeah, I did that, and when I went to college my first time around, I was on it was kinda like Black Student Union, but they called it African Student Alliance,
Okay.
and I was vice president of that, and, we even had to remove the president from his seat, and so I ended up president for a while after that, and so that was where, like, real kinda leadership started to occur, where I started to have to understand, like, decorum and some
Sure.
rules and protocols and be more mindful of how I represent myself and how I represent, the group that I am a representative of or that I'm leading with intentionality and et cetera. And so, I mean, I was still only, freshman, sophomore in college, but so still learning a number of things, but definitely was a part of um, you know, my roles
Yeah.
when it comes to leadership. And then when I was 29, so I've done a lot of things, and I imagine leadership looked a lot of ways, whether I was an admin on a team and led a
Mhm.
project, or whether I was just some other member of some other team and was intentional about doing good work and folks, saying, "Hey, I'm trying to do it like she's doing it," or corralling folks to get some project done or what have you. So there's been lots of instances, and I'm a mother, right? I'm a
Yep.
mother, a
Yep.
single mother at that. So I lead my household and budget, cleaning,
All the things.
scheduling, sports, dog rituals and cooking and life and all the things. So I mean that's just some natural leadership there. But when I was 29, I joined the Seattle Human Rights Commission as a
Mm.
youth commissioner. They had this really interesting youth commissioner program in Seattle, and the cutoff age was 29.
What?
29, they was still calling me a youth, and I was
Okay.
a youth commissioner, and so that was a really interesting experience. It gave me a window into some levels of leadership where there's not always power associated with it,
It's
right?
true. Yes.
There's not
Yes.
always power associated with it,
Yes.
like influence or there's some specific tasks that we need to carry out,
Mhm.
um, where you don't always feel the impact, you don't always see it, and so that was my first experience like that, where I was questioning whether I was a leader and
Oh.
in the world is this, right?
Mhm.
What are we doing? Is it impactful? But I had this really cool title and I definitely used my voice and my lived experience to bring a different perspective to that space because it was Seattle
Mhm.
and it was there was some diversity, but um, I definitely brought a lot of that diversity. And so that was a really interesting leadership experience. And then moving forward, I went back to college. I had left college for my first time around. I went back to finish out my bachelor's degree. And during my senior year of college, essentially, I led the student government at
Mm.
the Evergreen State College Tacoma campus. And that was, I think, my real experience with leadership, where I was cognizant enough to be present enough to have enough lived experience, to have
Mhm.
enough understanding of what I'm supposed to be doing, how I should probably operate, and also recognize when I wasn't leading well, right? When
Sure. Yeah.
things weren't going well, when I needed some support, when there's conflicts I'm trying to resolve between members, with myself and members,
Yeah.
and how to get things done, even when everybody's not jazzing together so well, or they are just coming from a totally different
Different.
view, and it's not quite feeling great, but there's still things that had to get done, and so my role was to coordinate that and to keep things moving forward regardless of the many, many, challenges that we face.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
sat on the board of trustees at Evergreen, for a year as a student trustee. I have also, done an internship at the legislature while working a full-time job and
Wow.
worked that night and legislature during the day. And, there was like 60 interns. I was the oldest intern. I was 35 at the time.
Okay.
And I was also the only intern that was promoted to a session aide during that session. and had to stay after for like a month because I got a promotion, so I didn't get to leave when everybody else left.
Oh, wow.
And so sometimes leadership means you got to stay when everybody else leaves,
It's
right?
so
Like
true.
you still there, and not everyone tells you that, right? You're like, oh,
No.
why do I have to stay?
Ex
Oh, because I was promoted.
That's
Well, yeah.
right. That's
So
right. When we were exchanging information before today, you mentioned something about having a leadership gene. So that just made me think of it like as you're laying out your story and the moments that you look back at and you benchmark as, moments that you recognize like, oh, I was leading that, or that was the position was a leadership role. Even if you didn't feel like you were coming in to lord it over other people, it still was a position of leadership or a piece of how you show up is a leader. You know what I'm saying? So that is really cool. I'd love that leadership gene concept.
and I have to say, I also I've always pushed back on leadership responsibilities. Like, I don't want to be the leader. I don't want to be the lead. I don't want to be the one in charge. I don't, and they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, Anya, like, you'll definitely be the one in charge. I have a mentor who was like, the one you tell to lead is the one who doesn't want to, right?
Right.
And they say it's because they'll do right by it, right? They don't want that power, control, whatever it is. So they're likely to do right by it. And I pride myself in being pretty laid back and trying to get things done with as little challenges as possible. And then when they show up, we just deal with it directly,
Yeah.
and, as best as possible. And I've learned that over time by, trial and error, making mistakes,
Sure.
getting over myself and oh,
I get it. So you just kind of answered the question I was going to ask you about what it feels like when you're being called to it, but you have to decide whether to answer or not. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? And it does sound like it has been truly a calling in your life, something that was already there, but then just was developed, which, that's what I think all leaders really should strive for. I would be really nervous to work with anybody who feels like that they've already arrived and they also see themselves as holding a leadership position. That would be a scary person to work with and for, in my opinion, just based on what I've seen in the other, like how you've described it. Like, everybody doesn't have to turn it down, which I did that too. Like, my mom tried to tell me that at a young age, and I totally told her, "Nah, you got the wrong one." And she's like, "No, I know you're going to do this, and you're going to be a leader." I'm like, you know, that
Yeah.
sounds cute, but whatever. And not that I was against hard work or anything like that. It just, yeah. Anyways, I just had a different spin on it. But I love that you have this big tapestry to bring with you to today. Like, it's so cool. And that it's still ongoing. There's more going on. There's some things that you want to do with your life that definitely require you to be able to look back and see all these different facets and these different phases and these different ways of viewing life and leadership as you navigate that. So, with the dynamic pause, we talk about pausing to breathe. That's our first pillar. That's something that we choose to do when we feel like things are maybe going so fast, maybe just moving so much and so fast all at once that maybe if we allow ourselves to metaphorically pause and breathe, we might have something that floats to the top for us in any given season or arena. So I wanted to ask you, you've carried the weight of representation throughout your journey. That's been there, right? Tell us about a moment when you had to pause and really sit with what it meant to be the only one in the room and what did you discover about yourself in that space?
I'm thinking about my experience as a member of the board of trustees at
Mhm.
State College. And, I was definitely the only Black person, but I was also the student trustee. So there was some power dynamics, some age dynamics. I also wasn't voted in by the public, right?
Gotcha. Mhm.
And most of the trustees were voted in by the public, but because I was a student appointee, some representation on that board that represents the entire college and folks from all over, usually affiliated with the college somehow.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't have as much like influence and power, right?
Sure.
And so, but I still had to be not only representative of every Black person at Evergreen
Oh my
as I
goodness.
right, but
Yes.
and that's just folks, we represent us all whether we want to or not. But I also represented, the students. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
There were no students on the board of trustees for our college, and so that was an interesting experience. I had to be really intentional, and I learned that over time. It took me a little while to figure out kind of what's my place here. What am I supposed to be doing?
Right,
I
right.
get do I tell them what I think? I had to
Mhm.
learn decorum. I had to learn just kind of the process, and I had to actually understand the work of the board too. And that
Okay.
took a little while. I had to be really intentional. When it was my time to speak, there was always a time for me to speak during a meeting, but I
Okay.
didn't to vote on anything. And so
Gotcha.
I had to get my speech together. I had to be inclusive of what the information I wanted to share
Mhm.
that was relevant to the agenda. I had to include what was going on at the Tacoma campus because
Wow.
Board of Trustees was at the Olympia campus. Granted, it's representative of all
All
programs.
program, yeah.
I had to bring Tacoma to Olympia 'cause wasn't nobody else going to do it. Because I also was the only person that was from the Tacoma campus and
Wow.
gone to the Tacoma campus and was still going to the Tacoma campus at that time that was on the board too. So I was representing a few different pieces, and so I had to be really intentional. It
Yeah.
took a lot of time, and I had to build relationships that I didn't necessarily want to build, that I wasn't really I mean, I would have been fine in my little corner over here in the hilltop, minding my business, doing my thing with my people, right? And so, um, but it opened me up to a lot, and it helped me see and understand more of the machinations of the school and kind of how it was functioning, how it actually worked. Sometimes I think some folks don't know the game that they're in, so they
Mhm.
really get a chance to play, right?
Yeah,
They may be seated in those rooms, but they don't understand what's going on, and so
100%.
actually participating in the way that could be more productive or helpful to whatever it is their cause is, and so
Mhm.
I had to figure that out, and it took a lot of time, and it was challenging, and I didn't always wanna be bothered, quite frankly. Sometimes
Because you still were a student too, so
I
it's
was still
not
a
like, yeah,
student,
you
yeah,
still were doing your classes and achieving your goals. You were still doing that. So
and I was
that
still working and momming and
all the
cooking and
things.
cleaning and vacationing and,
Yeah.
life and all the things.
Lifing, yes.
Yeah.
So, this makes me think of when you started to talk about how you had to show up there and how you had to be intentional. The word authenticity came to mind while you were talking about that. So, tell me, okay. So you mentioned that and some of the things that we talked about before, people are drawn to you for that honesty and authenticity as a leader. But we also know that authenticity can be risky sometimes, especially in either political or institutional spaces, right? So describe a time when you had to maybe pause and wrestle with how much of your authentic self to bring forward. What internal conversation did you have with yourself in that moment?
Um, hmm. So I say that I've curated my life to what it is right now, right? And
Mhm.
so I'm not in very many spaces where I can't be my authentic self at this time
Beautiful.
in my
Beautiful.
39-year-old life, right?
Sure.
And so I worked at the city of Seattle for a long time, doing various things. And when I left there, I said, never again will I work at a place where I can't be as close to myself as appropriate, right?
Sure. Sure.
'Cause
Yeah.
there's a time and place for
There's a
everything.
time and place. Yes.
And so, when I left the city, and I was very appreciative for my time there. I learned so much. I have really great friends that I still am, in good relationship with today. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I just refuse. And so there was only one job that I applied for, and this is not the advice I'm trying to give about how to look for a job.
Right.
However, manifestation works, right?
Okay.
And so I applied for one job at the Office of Equity for a pro equity consultant position. I remember I had to do the first round interview was like a video interview with just
Okay.
answering questions on video by yourself. I had never
Oh,
done that before. You get like
okay.
3 tries to record your answer and then you hit send or whatever. And it's the whole, and I was like, this is so interesting.
Yeah.
And girl, I remember I basically said, if I can't be who I am, then I don't want to be there. And I
Right.
think I cursed on my one of the videos because I needed them to know I be
This
cussing sometimes. Like I don't want you to find out. I want you
like,
to know
let's
who
just
you're
go ahead
dating.
and put it out here.
We cuss sometimes in business meetings,
Right.
and y'all do too. So don't play with me in this interview. You know what I mean? And so I remember, I had like a third recording that I could have done for that answer, and I was like, I'm gonna leave it
You gonna
there.
leave it just hit send.
Because I kept saying, I said, I promised to myself I would not work for another place where I could not be as close to my authentic self as appropriate, right?
Yes, I love
And
that.
so, I mean, I got the job. I've been working there for a little over a year, and I feel honored to work there.
Yeah.
It hasn't been easy. Any learning curve is real. Any space where you have to enter into a team, there's some turbulence that occurs so that everybody makes space for you, and then we make space for the next one, and then someone
Yeah.
leaves, close up the gap, right? And
Yeah.
so these things that occur on teams, storming, forming, norming, performing,
Mhm.
joining, all the
All
things.
of it. Yeah.
And so we did all the things and some more. And now I feel like I'm at a place where I feel comfortable being my authentic self, and I try to do that in most spaces. And I know everyone doesn't get to do that. And I know that's not a reality for everyone, but I've been really intentional about where I put my energy, where I'm at, where I'm not.
Mm.
And I want places that accept me as I am and don't make me have to conform, within reason, right? If
Yeah.
I understand process, protocol, and decorum in certain places, parliamentarian process, all those good things. So
Sure.
I'm a firm believer in please know where you're at.
Well, and that's so good. I'm glad you're talking about that because I think that a lot of us were brought up in systems that required us all to not just learn how to work within a system, but some of us had to literally change parts of who we are, not because we really wanted to, but because people just didn't see you at all or only put you in a certain way if you didn't. So then it got to be this thing coming up where because I think I got you by some years. I don't know how many, but I got you. But there comes to be this thing that if you are not fitting the system properly, then there's just not a way for you to excel or do da, da, da. And I didn't even know what the system was because that's how good I had been incorporated into it. I didn't even know it existed, right? And then you get older and you start seeing things and you start seeing formations of things and you're like, wait a minute, wait, hold on. And for some of us, our personalities help us to slide into these things a little bit more easily as well. But totally getting what you're putting down, and that is where I live in the space of that right now. Like there's places in my life that I care about so much, but at this stage of my life also, it's like um I can't pretend like I don't know these things. I
Sure.
can't pretend like I don't know that there's a concentrated effort to make me be something else for the comfort of others. I'm already a comforting person when I'm my whole self. Like, I already
Okay.
know that. Like, you know what I'm saying?
People like me. It's
Yeah,
fine.
I mean,
Yeah.
but as a leader, let's keep it in that context. If
Mhm.
people are having an issue with you, it could be like something against your leadership style. It could be, how you get down in that. It could be, honestly, on the leader's end, it could be something about your communication. It could be that you haven't clarified your values clearly enough so that people understand like where you're going with things. And the more we clarify those values, the more people can decide to get on board with them or not. Without that clarity, it's just a whole chaotic mess. So there's other reasons why people might not get down with you. There's jealousy, there's all kinds of stuff. But at the end of the day, if the only resolve is you just need me to not be me, that's a
Yeah.
problem. That's
Nothing.
that's a problem.
There was a
And
time where I did the same thing. I
yeah,
did what was supposed to be done and the
yeah,
way it was supposed to be done, and it drained me,
yeah,
it was so draining, and taking that mask off, putting it back on, or that code switching, you know what I mean? Like, it's a
yeah,
lot of work. It's a lot
yeah.
of work,
I
and
didn't
I
even
had
know I was
decided
doing it
I
when
didn't wanna
and
do that no more.
right. I didn't know that was a thing until later,
Yeah.
like, until after it was already named. When it got when I heard the name, I was like, "Oh, that's what that is?" Because it
Mhm.
was so instinctual that you just kinda went into this
You
thing
survive, yeah.
and you're surviving, and honestly, I probably learned the survival method before I even experienced true harm, but then when the harm came, I just
Mhm.
worked it on in. Like, I worked it on into the system. "Oh, this is what you just do," and flip the script, and I had my moments where I left places and things like that, so I'm not saying I always stayed, but I
Right.
don't know that I understood the gravity of all of it until later in life, and so, like, I just said something the other day online, I was like, "I'm not putting that genie back in the bottle to pretend
Yeah.
like I'm going to be a list of things for people that makes them more comfortable because of the definitions that they have learned in their upbringing, right? I can't keep swallowing the fact that I might be upset about something and express that I'm upset about something just because you might have learned that if a Black woman expresses herself, then she's the angry Black woman trope because they're all angry and they all. So, yeah, we all draw our lines of where we can go
Indeed, we
and
do, yeah.
where we're not gonna do anymore. So our second pillar in the dynamic pause is pause to negotiate. And usually what we're talking about is a time where we paused. Um, and usually in that pause, anytime some sort of clarity comes up, something that we will want to decide what to do with. We'll name that thing, figure out what we're going to do with it. Now, for you, I just wanted to kind of frame this question in line with maybe some of the work that you've done. How do you negotiate the tension between working in institutions while maintaining your commitment to grassroots communities?
Mhm. Well, when I was, in my undergrad, so I've always been one. I'm all about public service, right? I've always volunteered for this,
Mhm.
or, showed up for that,
Yeah.
or what have you. I'm a "what can I do to help" type of gal, right?
Mhm.
So in my undergrad, I started to volunteer for an organization called the Evergreen Empowerment Group, ran by Corwin Scott. He's an Evergreen Tacoma alum as well. And he does they do criminal expungement, and so
Okay.
they walk folks through the process of expunging their records. Because my trajectory is legal, right?
Mhm.
That made sense for me to intern there. So I interned there. Um, but as I continued to do my work, as my career started to move forward, my internship ended. I graduated from my bachelor's program. I'm currently in my master's program. I still work with Evergreen Empowerment Group. I
Awesome.
still help write grants. I still help with various programming. Even in my grant writing class that I took in my master's program, we had gotten an email saying that, there was a program at the YWCA that had lost a bunch of their staff due to federal budget cuts, and they needed
Wow.
support grant writing, and I threw my hat in. So
Aw.
I tend to do something on Day of Caring. I tend to do something for various holidays that are known for volunteer work.
Mhm.
And so I'm in community. I am blessed because my day job with the Office of Equity as a pro equity consultant, I'm required to go to community events at least two a month,
Oh, wow. Okay.
the office, wherever we're at, we're scattered across the state. And the office keeps a map of where we at. It's called Where
Okay.
it's our one of our jobs is to be out in community. So it helps me keep my ear to the ground. Even in my involvement with my other business ventures, I am in community in various spaces. And again, I call myself a busybody, not in a negative connotation, but I be outside, sis. I be outside. You never know where you might see me.
It's
I'm a
true.
cameo kind of girl.
Yeah.
I'm not everywhere, but if I'm there, I'm there. I may not be back for a while, but she was there.
Oh, I
Uh,
love it. We've
so yeah,
talked
I mean,
about that. Yeah.
yeah. hmm
That's so cool. Yeah,
And
we've
I
talked
enjoy
about
it.
that before because, like,
Mhm.
I think we met. Did we meet at NOR or was it at? Okay, so
We
we
need to
met
know.
at a networking thing, and then we had coffee one day, and we were talking about how, yeah, I pop in when I can, but then if I can't make it, I can't make. I mean, that's real. That's real. You're a great example of someone who does the internal talk. You've already been doing that for a long time with yourself. I love how centered you've been when you find yourself outside of these things and spaces that you know aren't serving you, that you quickly turn around, or it feels quickly because maybe we were telling a story, but you do come around and you make a decision and you move forward from there. And so I think what people often miss is that, especially people who are outside, because people who live like on 100, on 300, we don't often give ourselves a chance to pause and even have those discussions with ourselves. And that's what I was talking about with that pause to negotiate stuff, because we see things often that pop up in these scenarios that we're walking through, but we don't always take the time to, one, name them, but second, make an actual intentional decision of what we're going to do with it. And so even though you had friends and all that at the city, you knew that you couldn't be a part of that space anymore.
Yeah.
You made this decision and you moved on. You know what I'm saying? You did what you had to do. Even on the board, you probably had this moment that we might not have touched on. Somewhere in there, you had to have this negotiation time with yourself on, am I going to just sit on this board and say the checkbox, I did it, I was a student, whatever, or am I going to literally decide if I'm going to have a chance at making an impact? Or am I gonna have them remember that I had a voice while I
Yeah.
was here? And so I love that you have those moments. Is there a internal process that you actually put yourself through when you're thinking about those kinds of things and negotiating with these moments of clarity that come up?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I do have a support, with all of this. I have a life coach. I've talked to you about this. I
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
transformational life coach, and I don't play about my life coach, okay? And he knows I don't play about him.
Right, right.
And so I am appreciative of having someone on my walk, which is why I think the work that you do is so important,
Thank
because I'm a beneficiary of a life coach and it's been life changing for me.
Yeah,
Uh, and so I would be remiss if I didn't mention that that's a huge part of not just my internal conversations. Oftentimes, when I come to him, it's not a tell me what to do. It's a like, okay, so here's where I'm at. This
mhm,
is how I'm feeling. This is what I want to do. This is what
yeah,
I'm thinking about. Here's my concerns. Here's
sure,
my green lights, right? And we talk about the whole thing. And so that is extremely helpful to me. I also have, entered a place in my life. I'm 39 years old. It's been a long road and I've got a whole bunch more road to go. But I've come to a point where I have to do what's best for me, right? And so when I'm weighing something, is this what I want to do? I have to weigh how's this gonna make me feel? Like,
sure.
is this getting me closer to my goals? Is that still my
Is
goal?
that
Right?
still my goal? Yes, I love it.
Always open to the idea of my goals changing. I know what they are. I know I can see in the distance what I want for myself, and um, I'm always open to them changing because life is like that. And as we change and develop, who knows? I might not be interested in doing that thing anymore. So why would I like hold myself to something that I'm no longer in alignment with? So I'm really intentional about my alignments. I'm intentional about the friends I keep. I'm intentional about the people I date. I'm intentional about where I put my energy. I don't want everybody's energy touching
Ooh,
me.
ooh,
I
ooh.
just don't, and I'm okay with that. It took me a long time
Sure.
to be okay with that, and so I am really, like, proud and excited about my future because when you are able to let some of that stuff go, when you are able to listen to that inner voice, when you are able to like make decisions that are in alignment with what you really want for your life, it's empowering and it makes you go, "Oh my God, I am getting close to the woman I wanna become." You
Yeah.
know? And so
Yeah.
so I feel like I'm getting closer to the woman I wanna become. Again, lots of road to go, lots
Sure.
of things I deal with like everybody else, but I am intentional. I do work really hard at, like, how do I feel? What am I
Mhm.
going through? That
Mhm.
hurt. Why did that hurt? Should that hurt? And what do we do to make sure we don't do things that are harmful to
To
ourselves or
ourselves, yeah.
allow people to harm us in ways? What part of this am I in control of and what parts am I not in control of?
Yeah, that freedom is what I hear freedom ringing through that there's a piece that we don't really connect to enough in our lives, and some of us do it way later. I think there's more people in your generation and even the ones coming after you that get it a little bit more than some of the others that came
Yeah.
before you. I do also believe that that's why the landscape of the world is changing the way it is, and also why some groups that don't know how to function without controlling others are struggling so badly, right? If you are of any sort of grouping or mindset that you can't be happy with yourself unless you are controlling someone else in their future and their what they're doing and da 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 da, there's a problem there, but the rest of us are just over here enjoying what's
Yeah.
meant to be enjoyed. This world is so huge. We all get
It
to
is.
carve our little piece out of it, and we spend so much of it policing ourselves, policing others, into the lane that we feel like they're supposed to be in, we're supposed to be in, we can't even stay in it. The lane, you know what I'm saying? Like there's
Yeah.
so much going on in that. And so if people can hear you, I hope they hear the amount of freedom that's ringing in your voice, not a
Yeah.
pretend thing like there's no problems, not a pretend thing like there's not a journey to it of ups
Mhm.
and downs and sideways and pauses and backwards and stuff, but there is just this ring of, like, freedom of
Yeah.
choice that we remove ourselves from, um, so much, and we do it to ourselves a lot. Other people do it to us, but we do it to ourselves a lot,
For
and
sure.
then we
So
impose that on other people.
mhm.
Yeah, exactly. Because we can't get it done. We can't do that kinda damage to ourselves without involving other people too. So then we bring them into it and have them help, like you just was saying a minute ago.
And
So
I know we don't have, like, a whole lot of time, but I did wanna speak on, like, a pause, right?
yeah,
Like, I do pause often,
good.
it's not cliché, I take bubble baths, like,
Mhm.
so Dr. Maxine Mims, founder
Yeah,
of the Green State College
yeah.
Tacoma, started it at her kitchen table, made she
Wow.
hour, and one of the things she was telling to me one day, she said, "You know what's wrong with people?" She's like, "They don't take baths no more."
Oop.
Now, huh, what do you mean? And, I've always been a bath girl, but
Yeah,
anywho, she was telling me that, and I asked her to, clarify, and she said, and by the way, this is a 96-year-old woman, right? And
yeah.
she said, they don't sit in the bath and allow their mind to wander, right? To wander to other people, to
Mhm.
wander to other thoughts, like they're like, on the grind, bam, 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 constantly
Yes.
going. And so I definitely do that. I travel, I really think in order to be a bit more well-rounded, it's really important to be around people who ain't like you, right? And
Yes,
go
yes.
experience some other places. Go
Mhm.
go ride the dunes,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Go ride the rapids. Go to Africa, go to
yeah.
Asia,
I
to the
agree.
Bahamas. Like go see what they doing on the East Coast. It's real interesting. I particularly love the East Coast, okay?
Yes,
And
yes.
they love me. So I think it's important. I took a 3-day and I went to Universal Studios and
I
I got
love
into
it.
indoor, cosplay
Mhm.
outfit. And I literally went to Universal Studios by myself, made a girlfriend there for the day. We rode all the rides, did
I
all the
love
things.
it. I
And then
love
I
it.
went back to my time. So I think it's really important that whatever our pause looks like for us, and meditation is important. I'm still working on my meditative processes
Mhm.
and trying to
Mhm.
get those together just to continue to center my spirit. Whatever works for people, we gotta take those pauses, even if it's during your lunch break during the day, taking a walk, going and grounding yourself, putting your feet in the dirt and reminding
Yes.
yourself that you exist and you are a part of the universe, right? And you don't have to do nothing for this moment. So I give myself permission to do things like that. And I'm not perfect with it, but
Sure.
what I am saying is that know that I get to decide this life that I live. I get to decide when and where I want to lead, right? Because, yeah, people could pass me jobs, but I'm older now. I say
Yes.
what I want to do and I don't do what I don't want to, right? But also, there is so much opportunity and for us to take some of that control of our lives, even if it feels like we're stuck in a box, we can find a little space that we need. Then, it's best to think about how to make better choices for self,
It's
right?
so good. So good. Now, yeah, we'll get ready to close it up here. There's so much you and I know we could talk for a good 2 hours without
Yeah.
blinking. So maybe we'll bring you back
And
when
we
you
have
get and yes,
mhm.
it's so true. It's so true. But I want you to think about for the leaders that are listening who might be approaching or in their own season of pausing, whether they're questioning their path, feeling the weight of representation, or trying to balance, like competing demands. What invitation would you extend to them based on your own journey of pausing and emerging?
I mean, I would invite them to be kind to themselves,
Mm,
I
mm,
think that we give ourselves such a hard time, and I'm speaking from personal experience of just
yeah.
having these high expectations of self. Take care of yourself. You know what I mean? Care for yourself. Sometimes I'll be laying in my bed like sideways. And this sounds wild, but sometimes I'll be laying in my bed sideways and I'll just rub my little
Rub your own
cheek, my
cheek.
own little,
Yes.
like, hey girl, that was a rough day.
Yeah.
Care for yourself.
Mm,
Give that care that you give your man or your boo or your kids. Literally give that same care to yourself. You deserve it. It matters.
I
You
love that.
need it, and so I think that we got to be kinder to ourselves and we got to be honest with ourselves, right? That honesty is so important.
Yeah.
If it's you, baby, at least tell you it's you. You know what I mean? Then you can figure it out
Can you
because
figure out?
you ain't got to tell nobody else yet, right?
Yeah, yeah, get it.
You know, at some point you might, but I mean, do what you got to do for you. And
Yeah.
that's why I think coaching is so important
Yeah.
because my coach, and I'm sure you do the same thing, reminds me of the promises I made to myself, reminds me of
100%.
the life that I want,
Yeah.
right? So when I'm operating in ways that's like, well, I thought you wasn't doing that no more. What you do?
Right.
You know, that accountability is important. But anywho, and that's a part of that care of self. And so I would invite them to take care of themselves and figure out what they need and be
Mhm.
the one to provide it if that's what they got to do. Because if you don't, then who's going to do it?
So
It's you.
good.
You know.
So good. Yes,
Mm.
that is an awesome way to sum that up, and beautiful thing to leave with, and I just want you guys to know, hear me well. She already said she's out in these streets. You might
Huh?
run into her, but
Sure.
also some things we didn't talk about today that I want you guys to be on the lookout for. This woman, fabulous woman, is heading toward being a judge. And don't you see it? Can't you
Ooh,
see it? Wouldn't
thank
you want anyone that you know standing in front of her? Come on now, let's go. So keep your eyes out for that. Anya is going to let us know how to keep an eye on her, where to find her, how to follow her, so that we can keep up with all of these awesome community events that are going on. We're going to also drop into the show notes how to find her podcast and
you.
point people toward that because it's a
Thank
beautiful,
you.
beautiful podcast to follow. And then, guys, we're going to come back to you again. This has been an amazing episode of the Dynamic Pause. We are so glad you joined us. If you have any questions for Onya that you want me to pass on, drop those in the comments. We'll get
Holler
them
at
her
me.
way. And we are just so glad you came. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye,
Thank you
guys.
so much. Bye.
Behind your checklist, or a seasoned leader frustrated by what used to work but doesn't anymore? You've been holding your breath for too long. Adaruka specializes in helping ambitious professionals take their dynamic pause to breathe, negotiate, and innovate their way forward. From one-on-one coaching to team consulting and workshops, we'll help you rediscover your core purpose and lead with conviction. The life you desire isn't as far away as it seems. Start your journey at transform.coach.
Take a pause in the moment. Breathe deep, let the soul lift. The podcast is to grow with. The clarity is potent. Take a pause in the moment. Breathe deep, let the soul lift. The podcast is to grow with. The clarity is potent.